It is my distinct honor and pleasure to welcome back to the show a military veteran, a gentleman who is a member of the U.S. Marine Corps, because as I understand it, once you are, you always are. But he's also been a Navy SEAL. He's got combat experience in the first Gulf War. Is that correct, Craig?
Yep, absolutely.
So we've got a patriot, we've got a veteran, a father, a husband. Welcome back to the show, Craig.
Thank you. Appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, and I appreciate you accepting the invitation. I invited you here today, Craig, because everybody who's watching knows there's been this huge kerfuffle over the past few days with regard to your fellow Marine Corps veteran, Field McConnell, being incarcerated. And again, I want to state, neither of us are here to torment Field McConnell, to malign Field McConnell. We want to deal with facts because there are a lot of people, Craig, that I've observed around the internet who take things that are not facts and spread them like wildfire. It can be very damaging.
Well, you're absolutely right. It can be very damaging, and I think that it's a very important message to let everyone know that we must not run and perpetuate wild fantasy without factual backing. So there's a lot of damage that's being done to a lot of people in a lot of directions with falsehood, and I think we must not participate in it. Having been a federal criminal investigator, we deal in facts.
Right.
And it's concerning to me how I'll have people accuse me of being all kinds of horrible things, and I'll say, do you even know what my background is, who I am? And they don't. They've just heard someone say it online, and they're quick to run and repost it. So that culture is unhealthy. It's destructive. If I'm all about exposing the corrupt and bringing truth and accuracy, and you need facts to do that, to stay well grounded. And it's disappointing when people just get hyped up emotionally and run with wild craziness. We saw 50 million people get sucked into a fake story last summer, and a lot of them still don't know any better. So it's easier to fool people than to convince them that they've been fooled. It's true. That's how a lot of people work. And I think it's just to back you up, it's important that people be careful and really research and weigh out the facts before you start damning people and reposting negativity. And if once it's factual, it's factual.
Right.
But until then, we really do need to be precise.
And you and I have both been victims of this type of social engineering. It can start with a malicious individual. It can start with someone with good intentions. But once it gets put out there, it's really incumbent on every person who receives that information to scrutinize it carefully, to seek evidence before they make public comments. The lesson to be learned from what's happened with Field McConnell is that you got to be very careful what you say about people, because if it's untrue, particularly if you're accusing them of crimes or inciting other people to violence against a person, this is not something to be taken lightly. It can destroy lives as we are seeing right now. Craig, what's this incident you're referring to last summer that 50,000 people got fooled by?
Well, there's a guy who's back in jail now. He's a lifelong criminal, as a lot of these disinformation type people, YouTubers are. I call them clickbait libelers, because they slander and libel people for money. Either they're paid politically or they're monetizing their channels by attacking. And one of this group, they refer to him as Screwy Louie, Michael Lewis Arthur. He's got like 4 names. He hoaxed a child rape camp at a CMEX plant in Tucson last summer. And I got called into it by another fraud and crook who runs a management company in Tucson. He called me and told me that there were veterans, which was a lie, that had children in a bunker underground, which was a lie, and that they needed me, that they had chased cartels off of the site, which was a lie, and that they were just wanting to safeguard and strongpoint the position until law enforcement could get there. That was also a lie. Law enforcement were already there. They'd been there for an hour. So, or over an hour. And so from that, the guy made all kinds of claims that there were, there was just an underground bunker. It turned out it was I want to say the word cesspool. It was a septic tank turned on its side underground. And he said, there's children absolutely being eaten alive here and tortured and raped. And I'm like, man, this place does look creepy. It needs to be investigated, because of what he was saying. Those levels, they won't investigate. It's all a big conspiracy and they're covering it up. And he's yelling into his phone. He's a meth addict. He's really hyped up. And by yelling into his phone and saying the sky was falling, he got a lot of unwitting people hyped up and believing it. And because he told me that that law enforcement would not investigate because it did look creepy, I videoed it with my phone and I put it up saying, hey, this needs to be investigated. Well, over the next 3 or 4 days, we started learning that that guy is a notorious hoaxer. He's a fraud. And I ended up sitting down with the Tucson Police Department and going through all of the evidence. They're like, look, Craig, this bloody knife that he claims to have there, it was actually paint on a kitchen knife, and it was across town. It is. It's a homeless camp, not at this CMEX plant. He said there was bodies buried everywhere. He goes, we brought 2 cadaver dogs, not one, but 2. Not one of them ever hit on anything, and they were there for hours. He goes, so no bodies buried. There were no children there. There were no rapists. And he goes, all of our guys had already been there. He said, we've got chest cams, footage. Our officers wear chest cams. And he said, obviously Screwy Louie's not smart enough to realize we wear chest cams. We video everything. And we've got all the documentation and the reports. We've been dealing with this guy. And we've been out there dozens of times. And he's lying about it. I read through all the reports. I saw the detail. I saw the little girl's earring and the Cheerios listed that were down in the bottom of the septic tank. So they had, in fact, been there and been through a thorough inspection of the site.
Right.
In fact, the first officer that had gotten there, when she called in to dispatch, she said, hey, we need to investigate this. And they said, okay, what's going on? How many victims are there? Are there any dead? Are there wounded? And she said, no, there's nobody here. There's no victims here. And they're like, okay, well, where are the perps? Do you have them arrested? You have them handcuffed, or do you need backup? She's like, well, no, there's nobody here for that either. And they're like, well, then just inspect it, document everything, and write the report, and we'll investigate.
Right.
And she did. And they did investigate. And so everything after that was complete hoax by this guy, Screwy Louie. So once we met with TPD and we put out a video. I put out a video denouncing him, saying, hey, look, folks, we all wanted this to be some big solution, but it turned out the guy was just a meth head and a hoaxer. He was not even ever in the military. So that's another false narrative.
That's a felony,
you turned
isn't
against the veterans, Craig. Well, it is a felony, yeah. He's in jail right now. Maybe that's one of the things that he's getting charged for, along with domestic terrorism, because he did try to stage an armed conflict between veterans and law enforcement. He got up on a tower and yelled into his phone for veterans all across the country to bring arms and stand up against the crooked law enforcement and the that were covering this up. And so they came. A lot of them came, and a lot of money came to them through. They were sending him brand new quad runners and drones and cash and gas cards and
just people watching.
Well-meaning people who were watching him on YouTube and thought that he was a veteran saving children in the desert, not realizing he was a meth head, never served, and he was hoaxing the entire thing. So once we denounced him and said we'd looked into it, it turned out to be a fake and a fraud and was harming the real cause. A lot of people were disappointed because they wanted that to be the solution, and it just wasn't. So we said we're going to go re-engage with real operations because, as you know, Jason, we make real operations, real arrests.
Yes,
we arrest real child predators.
Well, and let's just elaborate on that for a second, Craig. Sorry to interrupt you there, but I want to elaborate because there's actually a large portion of your resume that I failed to reiterate, you were an air marshal after your time in the military. You were a contractor to various government agencies, and you're also the founder of V4CR, the Vets for Child Rescue. And of course, you are not currently a member of law enforcement, so as far as arrests go, you are not legally allowed to conduct an actual arrest, but you guys do investigations and you operate within the law to engage law enforcement when there are things that aren't being investigated, and you bring in law enforcement, as you've just described, to assist them in doing their job. You have got a list on your webpage here, vets4childrescue.org, where you've documented the people that were arrested in part due to your assistance with the Veterans for Child Rescue. Do you want to talk about this briefly?
Yeah, well, we run joint operations with federal and local law enforcement. We run the operation until the perpetrator has incriminated himself to the point where the district attorney and prosecuting attorneys have determined that the case is absolutely rock solid, and then we make contact with the perpetrators. So we run the operations essentially until it's completed, and then we hand them over to law enforcement for the actual arrest. So this last operation in Texas, we got 9 with 6 arrests and warrants for 3 more, 5 agencies involved in that. So the Vets for Child Rescue operational template is very effective. We've been asked to train law enforcement in multiple states now. We're meeting more governors, members from the White House. The operations are growing, again, with federal and local law enforcement. So you can look at the press conferences and releases from the different law enforcement entities that we work with. So, yeah, it's very effective, and we're happy to take each of these predators off the streets, because what not everyone realizes, Jason, is that it's a serial type of predation. These predators don't tend to stop. If they have a taste for sex with children, they want to manipulate and abuse them indefinitely. They keep going. They don't tend to stop. So some of them harm and ruin the lives of hundreds of children. Others get caught very early on. And the average they're saying is 70 children each. So if you take the 21 arrests that we've made now, you multiply it by 70 children each,
wow,
you can see the number of little lives that we're changing and stopping the rape and abuse. These predators that are put away are raping no more. And it's good and honest work, and we're all proud to be part of it. So that's what we do. And so a lot of the people that attack us, well, all of the people that attack us and slander us online don't do anything to help children. So it's interesting, successful and effective people that are productive aren't the ones online trashing people that do real work. It's low-life people who are libeling and slandering and just trying to gain relevance. It's unfortunate aspect of the culture that social media creates, where people don't feel like they need to be held accountable or responsible for their behavior. They hide behind fake accounts with no face, no real name, no honor, no life or company or corporation to defend. They won't put themselves out there. They just want to trash and attack people that do something more than them. Some of it's jealousy, some of it's political, some of it's spiritual, because the clash between good and evil really is in this predation upon God's most precious and innocent, the little children. What some of these weirdos do to kids, I'll never understand, but it's just dark, and it needs to come to a stop. So that's why I'm fighting for the children, and all the detractors are just kind of noisy out there. But you look at the quality of the people that are attacking, and you're like, oh, no wonder, because they're not good people.
Right. And I want to thank you for what you're doing, Craig. People who are watching who maybe aren't familiar with you and the work that you do should also realize that you're the father of a child who has been abused, and your family has recently completed that saga in terms of the attacker being imprisoned and finally seeing justice. But this is something that changes lives, not just of the victims, but their families. So this is a subject that's very close to your heart. And that makes these types of attacks on your character just all the worse. It really.
Yeah, it's really bad. It's unfortunate. There's no excuse for some of the fake accusations and the wild fantasies. But look, in March of 2017, our daughter was taken. I've got YouTube videos on my feed about it. I've done quite a few interviews now. Our documentary Contraland will walk through the story. But she was.
When is that documentary coming out?
It's to be completed on December 1st, and then we have the distribution to solve after that. So the film and television industry, the entertainment industry, stops from Thanksgiving to New Year's.
I'm glad you're bringing this up.
They don't do anything. So.
I'm sorry to interject. We've got a bit of a delay, but I'm glad you're bringing this up, Craig, because this is my field. I'm very familiar with film production and trying to get a film distributed. There's someone in the chat here who I did not want to address, but you've just brought it up. Someone is demanding, where's our $250,000? I didn't know anything about this, but then I asked this person, what are you talking about? And they said that your organization had raised money to create a movie, and here we are 2 years later and we've never seen it. Now let me just explain something to the audience before I give you a chance to address that. $250,000 is an incredibly low amount of money to produce a movie. A documentary is a complicated type of movie to produce because you're gathering a lot of information, a lot of footage. You don't know where the story is going to go until it's done. It involves a lot of editing. It can take many years to produce a documentary. And the aspect that you're talking about now, the distribution, can sometimes be the trickiest and most time-consuming part, because the film distribution industry is controlled by a very tight group of people who may not want the content that you're producing to be widely distributed. Am I making sense in what I'm saying?
Absolutely. Well, we've run operations with federal and local law enforcement in 5 countries from coast to coast. So there's a lot of man hours. There's a lot of work in gathering the truth. This is not something you walk downtown in your own hometown with your cell phone and put up on YouTube, right? This is a high-level professional documentary to change an entire culture against the fastest growing criminal enterprise on earth. So it's just ignorance. People that don't understand what's required, don't understand the film and television industry and what all goes into putting together a meaningful piece that's actually going to have a wide reach. We don't want several hundred or a couple thousand people seeing this. We want millions, tens of millions, even hundreds of millions of people to see this. Only that way can we have a profound positive effect on our culture so that we can begin safeguarding our children from one of the biggest secrets out there. Look on the mainstream news media. Are they warning us about the fastest growing criminal enterprise on earth, child trafficking? No, they're not. They won't speak about it.
Right.
And so it's important. If you want to circumvent all of the elite gatekeepers, there is a lot of opposition. And just to talk about the timing, yeah, man, we've been fighting and praying and dealing with this all these attacks on all fronts. There's ongoing investigation and litigation, but look, I'll just say this. We hired a producer initially to produce Contraland. He brought in a manager that I didn't know, a manager in Tucson of a management company, and the producer said, Craig, I'm bringing in this guy because he's great and he's rich and he's smart and he's successful and he's the best business manager I know. Well, the guy turned out to be an absolute serial criminal, con man. So he's bankrupted businesses all across Tucson and left families destitute. He's done it again and again and again. He and his whole family are basically a small crime family that embezzle companies into the dirt, and they target Christians that they think won't prosecute them, and they target nonprofit organizations. So he came in, this crooked manager and his crooked company out of Tucson, hired by the producer, and he started trying to take over. They took over our website. They took over our merchandise. They took over management of the film production at the request of the producer. And once they had their tentacles in everything, they moved into their new office. Ooh. Well, all of our footage was there. And when I came back from Southeast Asia last summer, he still hadn't accounted for all of the money that we'd paid for the documentary. And I was asking, when is the stop date? Where is the stop budget? Where is our product that we've been filming? And he couldn't answer me. So we sat him down, we cornered him, we demanded an accounting. Well, once we left from the office, I arrived home to a resignation email from him. Well,
stole all your money and now I resign. Very nice of him.
All of our documentary footage, all of our merchandise and equipment, computers and laptops and T-shirts and computers and big screen TVs for our operational room, our tables and all that, which most of that they still have. They've never given over the tables and the TVs and all that. They sent us actually. The fraud sent us empty boxes instead of the televisions. I guess he thought that was a snarky thing. Anyway, he can talk to the FBI about that here soon. But we've documented all of it, of course. But so we had to fight for a year legally to get our equipment back.
And so that costs money
if
too,
you're
I'm sure.
criticizing us for not having the documentary out there, please pay attention to the attacks that have been brought. This guy tried to infiltrate, undermine, and subvert our mission. I don't know if someone paid him to do it, or I don't know if he was just evil in his heart. I think the guy's personally an atheist. He says he's an atheist. I think he's at war with God and at conflict in his own life. And I think he believes that destroying people is somehow the way that he should benefit and survive, but he's going to go down legally hard because he's messed with the wrong family and wrong organization. Now he's doomed, legally doomed. He's already seen and documented. So he tried to sue us with a superfluous lawsuit just to wing it. He lost badly, and it's not over. He's going to lose more. So. If you're critical of us, look at the struggle. Look at that should have destroyed it. He took our website offline for no reason. There was no reason he should have taken our website offline. He did it out of spite because his little helper, he said, Craig, we can make your website better and you won't have to bother with it. Well, he wanted that control. So when he resigned, he turned off our website. So we didn't have access. We couldn't sell our merchandise. We lost a lot of momentum, a lot of funding. So that's what evil does when they attack your organization. That's the bitterness and hostility that we fought through. We've won. We've beaten it all. We've gotten everything back. But the documentary footage was very badly edited. And we're having to pay an additional $80,000 just to fix it, so that when we bring it to the networks for distribution, that it's viable. Because as it sits right now, it's not. So they're finishing all of that. And so those of you that support us, yeah, we do. We've paid them the first half of that $80,000, but we don't have the next half yet. So we're praying and hoping and faith that we'll rally that money so that we can pay them to complete that by December 1, because we do need to fund that. So, I would just say that we've got a platinum level rating for our transparency for our organization. We've got our real IRS documents, our financials right on our website. So all of the haters and trolls that want to post things and try to run us down are undone because we have the facts right on our website.
Yeah. I mean, unfortunately, we're dealing with people who facts do not seem to matter with these people. And
well,
I think
it's because they're not interested in the facts. They're on an agenda, and that's why. That's why you can post the facts and they don't improve, they don't respond, is because that's not what they're really after. Honest people don't follow these clickbait libelers to begin with, like the crazy, fake Pastor Dan, the fake, he calls himself a prophet, and he just attacks innocent people for clicks, and all these other the psycho out of Australia and the other lunatics that follow their model of, and what they do very specifically is they'll take the most straight-laced public figure they can identify, like Billy Graham or people like that, and accuse them of the most horrible, heinous crimes on earth, usually a satanic pedophile, so that the people will click on their YouTube channels
Right.
or their articles. And
Right.
it's all that it is. They're white trash. They're bottom feeders. They've all got criminal records, psychological problems, drug and alcohol problems, financial problems, destitute, wife beaters, deadbeat dads. I mean, you look into the history and you're like, wow, this is a really, convicted of criminal stalking and just all these things. So it's really a cesspool of people that are spreading this disinformation. So that leads us to Field McConnell. There was one of these psychos that was out there spewing all kinds of horrible falsehood that he was just like the others, so I never even paid attention to him. And his name is Holmseth, and somebody sent me a link, and he's got these dark black circles under his eyes, and he looks like a complete psychopath. And he was what he was saying, I'm like, okay, that's just wild fantasy. It's not even in the realm of possibility. So I literally ignored him for 2 years.
Yeah.
Yeah,
this is an invented thing,
to
isn't it,
so,
Craig? This Pentagon pedophile task force. I mean, he's posting statements that President Trump has asked him to do things.
No, they don't know. They don't know President Trump. He's probably never heard of them.
Never mentioned that.
I've got friends that work in the Pentagon. I've been in the Pentagon. There is no Pentagon pedophile task force. There are federal law enforcement agencies like HSI and FBI, and there is a HERO program of veterans that do cyber investigations against child trafficking. But there is no Pentagon pedophile task force. That's fantasy. It doesn't exist.
Right.
So I could go on all day about the falsehoods.
We should add they've presented. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but we should add that they've presented zero evidence that it does exist. And I've received so many emails this morning from people who saw the post that I made about the video that we're doing right now, and were prompted to contact me right away with all kinds of statements and comments about you, about Holmseth, about Field. Not a single one of these people included a link to any evidence. They just referred to statements and encouraged me to go research it myself. But the issue is, I can't research something that doesn't exist, and I can't research every email from 50 people who have no evidence that comes into me. If someone sends me a piece of evidence, I'll view it, I'll research that evidence, and I'll determine if I think it's true or false.
Yeah, we're not dealing with the sharpest elements of society. Let's face it. Educated people run their own companies, or they're well employed. They're not on the computer all day, repeating ridiculous fantasy and falsehood, like that JFK Jr. is going to be revealed at the Dallas Trump rally, and then lo and behold, big surprise, he wasn't. And that Obama has been executed at Gitmo. And come to find out, surprise, he wasn't.
Right.
So that's what Holmseth and McConnell are peddling out there, ridiculous conspiracy theory. Not even conspiracy theory, they're just fake stories that they just literally fabricate. So I would say shame on the people for giving them the time of day, and especially for repeating that when they've proven false. Well, I think we all have the responsibility to leave it alone. So I want to go through the McConnell thing, because with Holmseth being a blathering lunatic and spewing all these fake things for attention, I ignored him until people said, hey, Craig, Field McConnell's given him a big platform and his giant following. I'm like, nuh-uh. They're like, yeah, look. And so I go, that has to be some sort of mistake. Either Field McConnell has had a stroke, or he's, fallen and hitting his head. Maybe something's gone horribly wrong, because I don't know Phil McConnell, but I know in my mind what I've heard of him in years past seemed to be honorable. I thought, well, he's a Marine, he was a pilot. Maybe he was, in my mind, I thought he's probably a good guy. Well, so I just called him. I picked up the phone. I was like, hey, Field, it's Craig Sawyer, Vets for Child Rescue. Look, man, you're giving a platform to one of those crazy people that's absolutely called me all kinds of horrible, like, a CIA mind control wizard, and that I work for Hillary, when actually That's not true. I've never worked for her. And that satanic pedophile protector, and he, like on the kinds of things that these guys do for attention, right? And so I'm telling him, Field, he wouldn't answer the phone. So I left a message, and I recorded that, by the way. I've got video of me leaving him that message.
Uh-huh.
And not only did he not pick up the phone, but Field sent me a text message saying, Craig, please send it to me by email instead. So I emailed him the same thing. I said, hey, look, your boy Homeseth there is a fraud, and he's been trashing my real work. And so as one professional to another, pick up the phone and call me. I can walk you through. We got Jack Farmer, Bob Hamer, Admiral Moore, and Judith Reisman on our board. I've got dozens and dozens of tier one operators here. We've got people from the intelligence community, federal law enforcement. We're all Christians. We're good people. We do real work. I can provide you whatever factual evidence you may need. Let's get a hold of this Homeseth guy. Quit giving him a platform to attack those that are doing real work.
Right.
And Field McConnell, to my disappointment, wrote back a very nasty and insulting and childish response saying he didn't know who I was and that his partner, Timothy Charles Homeseth, is a respected journalist, which he's not, and that they're involved in these high-level cases, and I shouldn't ever waste his time again, never contact him again. And I'm like, wow, what a coward. What a ridiculous fraud. So he knows Homeseth is dirty, and he knows that he's fake, and he doesn't dare pick up the phone and talk to another professional because he can't defend Homeseth. He can't defend that. No one can.
Right.
So
I just
wrote it back. I wrote him back 2 words.
Yeah.
Wrong answer.
Yeah.
And a few days later, he's arrested on 3 felony counts for whatever it is that he's been behaving and whatever he's been doing. It's no surprise. And yes, I am celebrating his arrest because of the way he's treated me, because he's given such a large platform to a blathering lunatic who otherwise nobody would pay attention to, because what he's saying is demonstrably false. You can show with the facts that what Homeseth claims is false.
Well, let me just add one thing
very
here.
Disappointed.
I share your disappointment. I would hope that we're not going to celebrate Field's situation because he could be in serious danger. But I understand how you feel, and what he's done is really bad. We should also underscore the fact that since you're a Marine and Field is a Marine, I've never been in the military. I don't have this kind of experience, but from Marines that I've known and spoken to, even if you encountered a U.S. Marine on the street in the middle of, name the country or wherever, and you had never met before, it's a brotherhood, a camaraderie where the two of you as strangers would hug, would help each other, would treat each other like members of an elite fraternal order that have each other's backs. So it makes it really particularly strange that a fellow Marine would act in that way, not even engage with you in conversation to understand your side of the story. Isn't that right?
It's exactly right. Bob Hamer that you see there on our board, he was a Marine. A lot of our operators on our team are Marines, former Marines. Jack Farmer on our board was a Marine, long time, very honorable Marine. And so wherever I go on 10 November, the Marines, if they're in the Marine Corps for a day or their lifetime, they find a way, even on austere environments over in Iraq and war zones, they find a way to bake a cake and celebrate the Marine Corps birthday. We have ourselves a ceremony. It's absolutely a must. It's a guaranteed event. And so there is no esprit de corps or unit pride anywhere that matches that of the Marine Corps. That's just how it is. And they're proud and they're loyal, and that is peculiar. But all of Field's recent behavior is curious, and that's why I feel maybe he's had a stroke or series of strokes, or he's had a head injury or something, because it just doesn't make any sense to me, unless he's in such dire straits financially that he's compromised and he's sold himself out.
Well, you've mentioned certain criteria, which I absolutely agree with, that fit the profile of the people you're talking about. The one area where we might slightly disagree is that I think you're being far too generous to these people by suggesting that they're merely crazy and obsessed. I'm convinced that they are part of an organized network that's intended to diminish the strength of the message that you're putting out. I believe that this network of individuals doesn't even necessarily know the other people that are in the network. But one thing that's very interesting that's come about since the first time I ever saw you on, I guess the first time I saw you, Craig, talking about Veterans for Child Rescue was on Alex Jones' InfoWars. And whatever people think about Alex Jones, he was very effective in starting an independent news channel that does not toe the line that the mainstream media toes. I don't want to get into opinion-based statements about Alex Jones, whether people like him or not. That's a fact. The man was extremely effective at countering the narrative of the mainstream news, and we saw what happened to InfoWars. It was fractured, it was kicked off of every major platform, and huge efforts by technology giants have been made to minimize the effectiveness of Alex Jones and InfoWars moving forward as we approach 2020. And Craig, I believe that the same sort of targeted social engineering attacks are happening to you. They're happening to me. They could be happening to this lawyer, Kim Picazio. And again, I'm not trying to make an excuse for Field McConnell, but he may have been the target of an attack in the way I'm describing. As you said, he was in a dire financial situation. He's been very vocal about not paying his taxes and his belief that as a sovereign citizen, he doesn't need to pay taxes and the IRS is illegal and this and that and the other thing. There's a lot of things about the law that aren't necessarily just. But the way to combat it is not to make up your own rules and ideas of how to defy the law. The most effective way to combat it, unfortunately, is through the complex rigmarole of the law itself. Now, I've been in touch with members of the audience of Crowdsource the Truth, some of which who are lawyers, were lawyers. They've been talking to me about what's going on. And Field McConnell is in extremely serious trouble. He has defied an injunction issued by the state of Florida, a permanent injunction against cyber stalking, cyber harassing, speaking online about this woman, Kim Picazio. I have personally seen videos of Field McConnell showing her office address, repeating her name in defiance of this injunction, recommending people do citizens' arrests and go to her place of business and things that you should not do. Things that have been done to me. People have come here to my home, displayed it in a live broadcast. And the issue is, we don't know who's out there seeing these broadcasts. If someone who is dangerous or mentally unstable sees this and believes these lies and feels motivated to take action against a person like this in the real world, they're in serious danger. So Field McConnell is facing 3 felony counts that include violation of a Florida law against making terroristic threats. This is a serious charge. This is not the deep state framing Field McConnell. He received a court order and he defied it, something he should not have done. You need a minute? Sure.
May I come? Can you give me 2 minutes?
Yes. Handle what you need to handle.
Back, Jason. Pardon me.
No problem, Craig. We'll go into some detail about what I'm talking about here with Field. So I just want everybody to understand what's going on. Field right now is being held in a county facility in Wisconsin. And that is happening because he's being extradited to Florida. Florida is the state where the injunction was issued, and he violated that injunction in Wisconsin. So the local authorities in Wisconsin have arrested Field and put him in the local county jail where he is waiting to be extradited to Florida. He's going to have an extradition hearing on December 2nd. And what that means is, unless Mr. McConnell can get a lawyer or represent himself pro se to somehow affect this, maybe get a hearing sooner or somehow get a provision for bail from the state of Florida, he's going to be in this county lockup in Wisconsin until the extradition hearing on December 2nd. Now, keep in mind, this extradition hearing is not a trial where they will adjudicate the merits of this, case in Florida. They are just going to determine if he's been arrested by a duly authorized body and if there is a legitimate claim for his arrest in Florida. And it does appear that both of those criteria are met, and it seems difficult to imagine how he will overcome. Sorry, that's his date of birth, filing date. He's got this hearing on, sorry, Craig, I was just telling everybody, okay, Craig's getting back in the saddle there. I was just telling everyone that Field has an extradition hearing in Wisconsin on December 2nd. And after that hearing, it's expected that he will be extradited to Florida, where he will stand trial for the charges against him, the defiance of this injunction, making terroristic threats. You can't incite people to violence and tell them things. There's a lot of stories flying around about this lawyer in Florida. I haven't seen one shred of evidence. I have seen court cases where Timothy Holmseth is involved in a legal battle with this woman going back 10 years. 10 years, Craig.
Yeah, that's a lot of energy. I could understand if somebody was attacking your family, fixating on them like that, like a dog on the bone. But otherwise, it doesn't necessarily make sense, does it?
It doesn't make sense to me that someone would be that dedicated. I've got people who've been coming after me for 2 years, people who I haven't done anything wrong to. There are people who have stiffed me for six-figure amounts, and after a couple months of trying to get it from them and realizing that I can't and it's going to cost more money than I'm owed to retrieve that, I kind of forget about it and get over it. So it's hard for me to imagine that all of these different people would spend so many years pursuing so many people that there doesn't seem to be a clear reason for them to be pursuing. And it causes me to think about somebody who has like maybe a job at a factory that they're not in love with, or at an office that they're not in love with, or working in a restaurant. Maybe they don't like it so much, but they need to keep doing it because they need money to live, to pay their rent, to pay for their expenses. So it does stand to reason that someone would do something like continue to spread information about you and vehemently attack you or me if they're being paid to do that. Now, the other thing that I find really, really strange, and I've spoken about this with David Hawkins, are the connections between these people. Timothy Holmseth was heavily promoted by Robert David Steele as a man of integrity and someone who should be defended and listened to. Timothy Holmseth was represented by Stephen S. Biss, the same lawyer that's representing Robert David Steele in his lawsuit against me, represented Holmseth in this lawsuit against Kim Picasio. That lawsuit was dismissed as meritless, like all these other lawsuits that I've been talking about. What do you think about that, Craig? Is that a coincidence?
Well, I'm just bewildered at some of what is so obvious to a sane and rational adult. Let's take more recent events. Timothy Holmseth and Field McConnell claim that there were 2,100 children rescued underground in California 3 weeks ago by the Marines and the Navy SEALs. Well, I was a Marine and a Navy SEAL. Guess what? That incident didn't happen. But it didn't stop them from rallying a bunch of attention on their YouTube channel for it. And how could anyone believe such crazy stories? If there were 2,100 children rescued, there would be 10 to 12,000 family members celebrating for all they're worth the rescue of their children. It's not one person that's celebrating the rescue of their child from this giant 2,100 child rescue operation, because it didn't happen. It's fantasy. I would love to see that many children rescued. In fact, the biggest child rescue in the history of the United States was in Texas with the FLDS cult community and the horrid abuses of their children several years back. That was, I think it was 463 children rescued.
Wow.
That was far and away the biggest, and that dominated the headlines for weeks, as it should have.
Right.
That was a horrific discovery and rescue. And so 2,100, several times larger rescue, and not one person.
Not an interview with a parent, nothing.
No, yeah. So it didn't happen. I also know that the Pentagon does not provide witness protection. So Field McConnell and Timothy Homseth have been claiming that they're protected by the Pentagon, and it's sheer fantasy. The witness protection is handled by the different agencies. For those of you that haven't been in federal law enforcement or been involved in actual criminal cases, the witness protection is usually handled by the agency that's handling the case. So the Pentagon doesn't do witness protection.
They don't even do law enforcement, right? They don't do investigations. The Pentagon is involved with Department of Defense operations.
Yeah. So it's shame on people for not knowing. So look, was Obama executed? Well, if he ever shows his face again, well, there goes that story. Well, the Trump rally's already come and gone. JFK Jr. wasn't revealed alive there. So again, it's don't blame the clown for being what he is. Right? Blame the people that keep going back to the circus. Well, and I blame the people that perpetuate this falsehood and these fake stories. They're the problem. They're the ones that spread the cancer all over the internet and ruin life for good people. They just make a mess of everything because rancid platforms like Twitter and YouTube will allow them to do whatever they want and create dozens or hundreds of fake accounts with no identity whatsoever. So that's what really causes these vandals, these juvenile-minded vandals of the internet to be so pervasive, is there's no policing of it.
Yeah.
It's unfortunate.
Well, and again, I think it's a tricky thing if we want these social media companies to be policing what's going on there. The thing that we really need is for the viewers of these videos and readers of this content to be discerning for themselves, because I don't really want to put the discernment in the hands of YouTube and all of them, because I agree with you. I think that they're complicit in this by allowing these anonymous accounts. We've recently heard that even Mitt Romney has a sock puppet account, Delicto, whatever, Pierre Delicto. So obviously they want to preserve the ability to use these tools in clandestine ways, and I think it's part of a larger social engineering agenda that they have. I want to point out a couple more similarities in operational procedure. Timothy Homseth has published a book. He's self-published a book on Amazon that I really find it difficult to imagine that 10 people bought it and read it, but it's about this Haley Cummings case. I don't really know anything about this other than that Timothy Homseth was investigating it, but he publishes this book. He puts it out there.
What does he mean by investigating?
I don't know.
Sitting on his computer at home.
Right. I don't know.
Yeah. Wow.
But he puts the book out, right, Craig? And this is very similar to the actions taken by David George Swigert. He published a book of his opinion, of his distortion of the facts of what occurred in the port of Charleston in June of 2017. And he's now using that book as an element of evidence in the lawsuit against me. Because again, it's not a fact, it's just a point of data that's there that he can point to. And if he tries to bring a lawsuit against someone, says, oh, in the book regarding Haley Cummings, blah, 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 XYZ is said, he can refer to that in a civil lawsuit. And if he convinces a jury in the way that he's convinced a significant portion of the court of public opinion that what's in this book is true, then he might prevail in a lawsuit. He might extract money from you. He might get some sort of a ruling to prevent you from doing something. But the point is, I think these types of individuals swarm around the activity that something like a person like yourself does when you demonstrate that you are effective. I mean, let's talk about this for a second, because as a Navy SEAL, as a U.S. Marine, you're obviously able to kick a tremendous amount of ass, but there's a ton of guys who probably have that profile who maybe aren't comfortable on camera, maybe can't articulate their message as well as you can. So when you demonstrate that you're sort of a crossover figure, that you can be effective in the field and on the ground, and you can be effective at mobilizing a corporation, mobilizing a battalion of individuals, and broadcasting that message to the point that you gain 100,000 viewers on Twitter and elsewhere. They become concerned about that because your message may start to overpower the mainstream news message or the socially engineered message that they want going out.
Yeah. Well, there's been no shortage of suppression and an attack upon our mission and our message and our reach, and we take it as a point of honor, because they don't attack the weak, they don't attack the ineffective, they attack exactly what you described. They attack people with an honorable life, credibility, and reach and contacts, and so we just keep doing what we're doing. We're building our organization and mission stronger every day. Our law enforcement and political and financial backing and contacts are growing rapidly now. And so none of this will stop us, none of this disinformation. But it is interesting from time to time to just unpack it and just reveal and talk to people and tell them what it is, show them what's really going on, so that those that are interested in the dregs of the internet can watch this interview and listen to factual reasoning and the relaying of the actual situation in a factual way, and piece it together and see these clickbait libelers for what they are, or political subversives, disinformation. Cesspool really is what we're dealing with here.
I've used that term before myself. There's a lot of people putting questions into the comments here, and it goes right to what you were saying. We don't know who these people are. Anybody can create an account on YouTube and come on there under whatever name. You're showing your face. You have been a whistleblower in your career when you were in the Air Marshals. You know firsthand what it's like to be targeted when you are effective. You came forward in that organization and they put you through the ringer.
Let me ping on that, because the people that are attacking me on disinformation should care that I blew the whistle on a crooked SES level executive from the FBI, and he was fired for gross mismanagement. Mm-hmm. So if I'm a horrible, evil person that's part of the deep state, why am I getting them removed? Why am I losing my federal career and sacrificing to do the right thing? So they're undone by the reality of what I've done in my life, the life of honor that I've actually lived, the sacrifices and the decisions that I've actually made completely shatter their false narrative. So, yep, David Knowlton and the Federal Air Marshal Service came from the FBI, and he was caught keeping illegal dirt files on his own agents. Decimated that field office, took it from 210 hard-charging, highly motivated agents down to 30-something guys.
Wow.
Who are all demoralized and disheartened. And he did eventually get fired for gross mismanagement, but not until after he was allowed to retaliate against me for blowing the whistle on him. Because at the time, Federal Air Marshal Service was under ICE. And so I could not report David Knowlton to Tom Quinn, because Tom Quinn was the director that hired him. And Tom Quinn went to go work for a corporation making millions of dollars, whose software, or PDA, he had forced our agents to use for reporting, and that we didn't want it. It was a bad arrangement, but Tom Quinn benefited from it wildly. And once a congressional delegation came to investigate the Air Marshal Service for gross mismanagement, Tom Quinn resigned suddenly and took a multi-million-dollar job with that company that he gave that contract to. So if that's not the definition of corruption, I don't know what is.
Yeah.
But so David Knowlton decimated this field office, and I blew the whistle on him in good faith to defend myself and my fellow agents there in Las Vegas. Mm-hmm. And the Inspector General of ICE, according to David Knowlton, called him and told him that I had reported him. So rather than providing national security whistleblower protection for me, the Inspector General of ICE betrayed me and reported me to the crook rather than interviewing the crook. And incidentally, the reason I reported him in such an emergency fashion, because I had 3 agents come to me with official statements saying, boss, we think someone's going to go postal in his field office. It's prime for violence in the workplace due to the level of hostility that this Knowlton guy has brought.
Wow.
And so I had a duty to act.
Let me pause you there for a second, because Craig,
the threat of violence there.
This is very interesting, and this is essentially what you're doing now. You're blowing the whistle on criminal corruption. You mentioned SES, and Field McConnell has been, for as long as I've known him, extremely vocal about his, at least his opinion, that his sister was pivotal in the formation of SES. And all of this just causes me to wonder. There's a lot of very powerful government-connected people who have a lot of reasons to dislike Craig Sawyer and to seek revenge and to stop him from doing what he's doing and continuing to be effective. I want to pose one more thing to you, because what you're describing with blowing the whistle and these guys who are now working in private industry for companies that make software, that do things for crime solving and law enforcement, I don't think it's that far-fetched to explore a line of speculation where we might consider, are any of these people hiring agencies, individuals, cybersecurity firms, opposition research firms, reputation management firms, whatever you want to call them? These are groups that can be hired by law firms, by private investigators, by political candidates, by anybody to pursue whoever they want, to seek information, to put out information. And when they say opposition research, I think it's a bit of a misleading, kind of a misnomer. You see, because digging up dirt is doing legitimate research on a person and finding something unflattering in their past. It's different than inventing false stories and basically weaponizing a smear campaign against the person that we're talking about. And with regard to Field McConnell, I agree. His behavior is very difficult to understand. And, you know, there was an event in Dallas where I spoke about this with David Hawkins the other day in our broadcast. John B. Wells had an event in Dallas called Operation Classified. And at that event, Abel Danger, A-B-E-L, Danger, the organization most closely associated with Field McConnell, was in the same physical location as Tony Shaffer of Abel Danger fame, A-B-L-E. Now, you've been a contractor to the CIA. Tony Shaffer's London Policy Center website describes him as an intelligence operative who trained at the farm. That seems to say CIA to me. So I don't know if there's a connection. I don't know what connection there might be, but I do know at that event where those two Abel Danger factions came together for the first time, Field McConnell's attitude and behavior towards me took a 180-degree turn, and he started acting in very strange ways. I want to be clear. What's happened to Field McConnell here is not somebody else doing this to him. This is not the deep state setting him up. Unless they convinced him to say and do the things that caused him to violate this Florida state injunction, Field McConnell did this to himself. So I don't know if anybody from Anthony Shaffer's Abel Danger somehow convinced, coerced, or worked with anybody from Field McConnell's Abel Danger to change the nature of that organization. But they seem to be attacking you. They seem to be attacking me. And they're doing it with lies, not with facts and evidence. What do you think about all this, Craig?
Well, I would say that Tony Shaffer knows me well enough to know my legitimacy and where my heart is. So I would hope that Tony would intervene and shut that any falsehood down about me. So maybe I'll give him a call and see where he's at on it. But he's had he knows me well enough. He knows I'm the real deal. So
Hmm.
I trust that he'll stand up and make that clear
Yeah.
in the face of any nasty adversity out there
Yeah.
that he's privy to.
Yeah, because definitely Tony Shaffer and his London Policy Center are closely connected to a lot of very important things. And I don't want to accuse anyone at the London Policy Center of anything. I'm just making that observation that there seemed to be a lot of activity going on at that John B. Wells event. I'm speaking for myself alone when I say that I do not trust any of these think tank type things. This seems like some sort of private intelligence operation. We've got a lot of former CIA people involved with this. We've got a lot of former intelligence operatives involved with this. And maybe it's doing some good things, but I have some questions for Mr. Shaffer. Perhaps he'd like to appear on the show. If you've got a personal relationship with him, by all means, speak to him. We should ask him what, if anything, was said to Field McConnell at this event, because John B. Wells took me aside at one point and asked, why is everybody telling me that you're CIA? Now, Craig, I know you don't know me that well, but you've worked with the CIA. I don't know. I'm not even going to ask you to evaluate that comment. I can tell you I've never had anything to do with the CIA. The closest I've ever come is talking to Kevin Shipp, talking to you. My life is pretty laid out online for many, many years, and no one has presented any evidence to support these claims.
Yeah, I don't know. Who knows how these things happen? I just like we were pointing out earlier, factual evidence is how we need to base our understanding of things, and I think as long as we do that, we're on solid ground, and that's healthy and good.
Yeah.
And how our culture ever got away from that is a point of misfortune. But I think the internet is not reality. It's not. I mean, I know a lot. Most of the most effective people that I know aren't even on the internet. They don't like. I don't have social media. So, I think it's healthy to realize once in a while that whenever there's the people you look on the internet for information or support or things. Yeah, there's a lot of good people on there, but you have all the trash too. Yeah. So I think it's just taking everything in balance and realizing, man, the real world work, the actions speak louder than words. There's so much now in this crazy culture of our new globalist-owned news media that are trying to bully us into pretending that somehow reality is upside down, that words matter more than actions. Well, we all understand that actions speak louder than words. That's a universal truth. We've all known that and see that to be true. And so I just refuse to entertain the notion that somehow words matter more. A classic example is with our president. Look at the factual statistics, man. The economy is booming. He's rebuilding the national defense. Minorities of every type have better job opportunities now. There are less people stuck on welfare. He's empowering all Americans, and the stats are through the charts, man. And but if you watch the news, they say, oh, but it's how he said it, though. We've got to replace him because of how he said it. I'm like, wait a minute. He's effective. What he's doing is working for all of us. So why does he have to go? Because you don't like the way he said it. We don't have to like the way that he says it, because actions speak louder than words, ultimately. So it's just a notion that I reject. I think we all need to focus on real world action and not get so bent about the words. I think that's a healthier outlook. That'll take care of all of us moving forward. Focus on the positive, get good things done. So many of us, we've got so many choices every day, and an entire array of things that we can choose. And what's made me feel really good is to choose something that helps the most defenseless and the most innocent among us. What helps the children? Well, to arrest their predators and stop the raping, to alert the populace, to alert the American people that I love, that I've served and defended my whole adult life, so that they know the threat against their children, so that we can rally around the children and defend them from all sorts of harmful activity, child rape and selling them like objects. It feels good, even though it's child trafficking is an ugly topic. It feels good to be doing something about it. That's just how I'm wired. That's I think as humans, that's how we all are wired if we really are honest with ourselves. So I think, it's healthy that we brought up a topic of all this negativity and the attempt to suppress the credible people that are bringing the truth, that are making real effective operations against child trafficking and so forth. But they're losing. And we all have the chance and the opportunity to choose to take positive action and to ground ourselves on reality and factual evidence. Yeah. And if we do that, life can be pretty darn good, even in crazy times such as this.
Very well said, Craig. I have to say that, you've raised an excellent point by making the analogy to President Trump and the way that the news reacts to him. But again, I think you're holding back a bit, because there is a stronger analogy between what's happening to President Trump and the very topic we're discussing here today. But it's happening on a much bigger scale. Just like people are making up stories about you, saying that you were Hillary Clinton's bodyguard, people are repeating that in our chat. That is not true. You never worked as Hillary Clinton's bodyguard. But we've also got Adam Schiff saying, Donald Trump has committed an impeachable offense. He asked his counterpart in a foreign country to investigate serious corruption. Adam Schiff would like to socially engineer the people of the United States of America to make you believe the falsehood that he's saying and disbelieve the truth, the black and white, written in a telephone transcript truth of what Donald Trump actually said. So in the same exact way that the public is being socially engineered against you, Craig, the same tactics are being used to socially engineer the public against President Trump. And I would hope that the people watching our broadcast today, who know that what I'm saying about Adam Schiff is accurate, will consider that it might also be accurate in the case of Craig Sawyer. I want to thank you for everything that you've done, Craig, and I want to thank you for everything that you're doing. And I want to make sure that our viewers know they can learn more about you and the Vets for Child Rescue by going to childrescue.org. And I hope that our viewers will click on the donate tab and send some money to your organization to make sure that this documentary can be completed and the important work that you're doing can carry on. I've been a filmmaker for my entire life, and 2 years to make a documentary is not a remotely long time. All of the business problems that you described are absolutely typical of dealing with many people in Hollywood. There are shysters, there are liars, there are lazy people, there are drug addicts who want to take your money and tell you they're going to do something and then not do it. And I, for one, do not hold you personally responsible for that. You strike me as a man of integrity who's doing his best to do his best. And you have my full support, Craig.
Well, thank you. And we've been fighting all comers to keep this mission on track. I will not stop. And what has been brought against us from the inside with this crooked manager from Tucson would have destroyed any other nonprofit organization. But we will not quit. And we're succeeding even still. And you brought it up, so I want to just ping on it before we sign off with Hillary Clinton.
Yes.
So as they want to keep going, Russian collusion against Trump, and it failed because it was false. It was actually the DNC that were involved in the Russian collusion. So all the facts have come out, right?
Yeah.
We've got the WikiLeaks emails. You can read Hillary's own emails and see what they were actually up to. That's factual evidence. Same thing with Schiff. We all know he's dirty, and he's just completely fabricating falsehood. So I love the T-shirts at the Trump rally, people standing behind him, read the transcripts, right? Because that's factual evidence.
Right.
And what Schiff says when he notionalizes and changes the narrative and keeps bombing people with it, he thinks that by him repeating it, it'll somehow become our truth. But those of us that are smart enough to read the transcripts base ourselves on factual evidence instead. So with the Hillary accusation, that's another thing that either just stupid people that don't bother to look into it, repeat, or those more than not, they're part of the dark side, they're part of the opposition, and they use it as the same repetitive talking point. He worked for Hillary,
Right.
like I loved her and followed her around the world or something like that. It's been addressed dozens of times in interviews, but these kind of people won't share them. They won't consume the facts. They'll just, click and post it again. So for those that are genuinely curious and haven't seen it or before, real quickly, after the Air Marshal Service, I went to go contract for the Department of State through a company called Triple Canopy, a bunch of former Delta Force guys, really great guys, running high threat mobile security for Department of State. I ended up being a senior trainer and an agent in charge for the mobile security in a region of Iraq. It was Kirkuk region. Wow. And I was in charge of the mobile security for all of the stationed Department of State personnel, chief of mission personnel, meaning when they went from one town to another, the motorcade, I would run and control that, and all the guys answered to me. So I would plan and map that out and oversee that. So talking about dozens of guys and numerous vehicles running these protective moves. So that was my area of responsibility for all these personnel, right? So you've got dozens of people on the site, and you got dozens of people coming and going daily or weekly. And so Hillary Clinton and John McCain did come over for a visit there once, for a very short visit. And they showed up with only 2 Secret Service guys with them. And so they didn't have an adequate detail. So technically, they fell under my responsibility for mobile security. So that's where that rumor came from. They came, they had their meeting, they left. That's it. I never worked for Hillary. I never worked with her. I never answered to her. Certainly didn't work for her. So he was her bodyguard. Is a complete falsehood, complete fabrication. It's nothing. In reality, I was the agent in charge of a region in Kirkuk. Hundreds of people annually would come and visit. She came with McCain for a very short visit for a series of meetings, and then they left. That's it. So I hope people will share this video wherever they see that fake accusation posted, and just bring the reality. There are a lot of diplomats, a lot of special operations heroes and veterans, decorated heroes that were there that know the truth. And so there's your factual evidence, and everything else is just hateful lies. So there it is. Hope people will actually make use of it this time.
I appreciate you answering that question head on, Craig. And for me, that's the mark of an honest person. You're asked a question, and no matter how annoying it is, no matter how fake it is, you've got a very sensible answer that hasn't wavered from your answer that you've ever given to that question. And these guys insist on bringing out the same tired nonsense. But I want to thank you for appearing with me today, Craig, and you have an open invitation to come back to the show anytime at all. Any last words before we wrap it up?
No, just thanks for helping get the word out. There are a lot of information gatekeepers, and it's important that we all network, and I'll go on just about any platform I can to try to get the truth out to the people. So I appreciate your part in being careful and accurate and getting truth out. And that's why I was willing to come on with you. You seem to be very careful and accurate with your depiction of things, and that's what we need to do, all of us. And so I appreciate you doing that. I do.
Thank you. And I appreciate you saying that. I do try to be careful and accurate, and I've become very sensitive to these false allegations because they're being used against me, they're being used against you, they're being used against people who are effective in doing things that evil people don't want done. So that's very curious.
That's it. That's the bottom line.
Craig, thanks for joining me today. Thanks to everybody for watching. Don't forget, Crowdsource the Truth needs your sponsorship to carry on. We're a community-sponsored, viewer-sponsored news resource. So please get over to subscribestar.com/crowdsourcethetruth or patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth. Sponsor the show. You're going to get access to a ton of sponsor-exclusive content that I know you're going to love. And while you're doing that, please make sure you visit vets, VETS, the number 4, childrescue.org. And please donate to the tax-exempt charity that Craig is running over there. They're doing good work to rescue children. They're going to put out a documentary that's going to hopefully educate hundreds of thousands and even millions of people. We've learned that Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell and incredibly wealthy, powerful, politically connected people like that are in fact trafficking in children internationally. It's not a rumor, it's not a hoax, it's not a conspiracy theory, it's a fact. And when effective people fight it, social engineers rear their ugly heads. I want to thank my guest, Craig Sawyer. I'll see everybody soon. Don't miss Dr. Corsi's Prescription for America coming up later today. Thanks for watching, everybody.